A standard cycle passed. The eclipse of reason remained at its post, but its mission had quietly changed. It was no longer just watching a forbidden boarder. It had become a listening post, a place where the silence from human space was studied not as a threat, but as a signal. Commander J. Kim and his crew were now experts in that silence. A Threxian dissident, KRTH, had fully recovered. It, or rather, he, as he now preferred, had been granted asylum by the Galactic Consensus. His testimony and the data from his surgery had caused a revolution in Threxian society. The quiet idea was spreading through their hive links not as a shout, but as a whisper, a question. What am I? Whole clusters were breaking off, seeking the surgical procedure to become individuals. The Threxian swarm, for the first time in its history, was facing an internal crisis of identity, not of conquest. They were too busy with their own awakening to threaten anyone. Scholar Nari had published her findings. The report was titled, "The Peaceful Filter, a Re-Evaluation of Human Space." It was read across the galaxy. The fear did not vanish overnight, but it began to be replaced by a cautious, profound curiosity. A High Council began drafting new protocols for eventual peaceful contact. They were long, complicated documents. Jay knew they would take years. He did not mind. His own contact continued, slow and simple. Every few weeks, a personal packet would arrive from Captain Lee Ji-hoon. Sometimes it was a short message. Sometimes a piece of media. A recording of rain falling on leaves. A child's drawing of a spaceship sent by Lee's niece. A recipe for something called kimchi, with a note saying it might be too strong for non-human biology, but to try it carefully, J would reply in kind. He sent a recording of the station's hydroponic garden boom's opening. He sent a popular consensus lullaby. He sent the results of their cautious kimchi experiment. Most of the crew found it terrifying, but Dr. Tae-Hyan loved it. It was not diplomacy. It was two people from two different worlds sharing pieces of their normal. One day, a different kind of message arrived. It was marked with Lee's personal code, but the header was unusual. An invitation. Jay opened it in his quarters. Lee's face appeared on the small screen. He looked the same, calm and steady. "Commander Kim, I hope this finds you well. My ship, the Steadfast, will be performing a routine calibration of border sensors near your station sector in 7 days. It is boring work. While we are there, I am authorized to extend an invitation. If you are willing, and if the Galactic Consensus protocols allow, you would be welcome to visit. A short tour. No diplomats. No soldiers. Just you and perhaps one or two of your crew as my guests. To see the other side of the line. Think about it. No pressure. Lee out. The screen went dark. Jay sat perfectly still. An invitation to cross the border. Not in a crisis, not to save a life, but as a guest. His heart beat a little faster. This was it. The moment the rule was not broken, but respectfully set aside. He called Mi Sha and Min Su to his office. He played the message. Min Su's eyes went wide. Mi Sha simply stared, then a slow smile spread across her face. "The Council," Min Su started. "The Council's new protocols are not finished," Jay said. "This is not an official first contact. This is a personal invitation between two commanders who have become pen pals." He looked at them. "But it is a first step. A big one. If I go, I want you both with me." Getting permission was easier than he thought. Scholar Nari, when consulted, shimmered with excitement. "You must go," she said. "You are the perfect candidate. You approach with knowledge, with a relationship, and with no weapons. You are the living test of the filter. We will observe from here. Record everything you feel, everything you see. 7 days later, The TBS Steadfast appeared on the edge of the border. It was sleek and silent. Jay, Mi Cha, and Min Su boarded their shuttle, the same wayfinder that had started it all. This time, there was no fear. Just a humming anticipation dot as they crossed the green line on their map. Jay held his breath. He waited for a tingle, a shift, a feeling of being scanned. There was nothing. Space looked the same. Their shuttle systems hummed normally. A friendly voice came over the comm. It was Kang Su-min. Wayfinder, this is Steadfast. Welcome. Please follow the guidelights to our main hangar bay. They were led inside the human ship. The hangar was clean, well-lit, and empty, except for a few small utility craft. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something else, something like warm bread. Captain Lee was waiting for them, alone. He shook Jay's hand, a human custom Jay was ready for. He nodded to Misha and Min-Su. Welcome aboard, Lee said. Let's keep it simple. The tour was simple. He showed them the mess hall, where a few crew members nodded politely as they ate. He showed them the garden room, full of green earth plants. He showed them the bridge. It was calm, quiet. Officers spoke in low voices. Screens showed star maps and data, but no weapon statuses, no threat alerts. It felt less like a warship and more like a research vessel or a very advanced home. Finally, Lee took them to a small observation lounge at the ship's bow. The view was spectacular. Stars blazed against the dark. This is my favorite place, Lee said. To think. Jay looked out. It looks the same as from our station. It is the same, Lee agreed. The only thing that is different is the rule. And today, we are choosing to ignore it together. He turned to them. You have questions. Real ones. Now is the time. Min-Su spoke first, his voice full of technical hunger. The filter. How do you turn it off for us? Lee smiled. We don't. It's not a switch. It's a condition. You came aboard in peace, with curiosity as your only weapon. The filter doesn't see you as something to stop. If you had come aboard with a bomb in your heart, or even a plan to steal secrets, your shuttle would have gently stopped working before you even reached our hangar. Your own peaceful intent is your key. Mi-Cha asked the softer question. The first brush. Do you regret it? Lee's face grew solemn. Every day. We learned a terrible lesson about the power of a new idea. We accidentally caused pain. That is why we are so careful now. The border is our way of saying, we are learning to speak softly. Please approach softly too. Jay looked at the human captain, this man who held the power to silence warships with a thought, who shared recipes and children's drawings. The contradiction finally made sense. The power was not for control. It was for protection. To create a safe space where the quiet could exist, where mistakes could not be made with guns and bombs, only with words and ideas. Thank you, Jay said, and he meant it for everything. For showing us. Lee nodded. Thank you for coming to see. The return trip to the Eclipse was quiet, each of them lost in thought. As they docked, Scholar Nari was waiting, her dark eyes full of questions. Well? She asked. Jay stepped off the shuttle. He thought of the calm bridge, the garden room, the view from the lounge. He thought of Lee's regret and his quiet pride in his crew's garden. There is no great secret, Jay said finally. No superweapon to covet or fear. They have just decided that the most important thing to protect is the right to be peaceful. Their space is not a fortress. It is a sanctuary. And the door was never locked. We just never tried to open it with an open hand. The news spread through the galactic consensus. The commander of the Eclipse of Reason had entered human space and returned unharmed, unchanged, but deeply changed. He had seen the reality behind the rule that no species enters human space, and now they finally comprehend why that it is not a ban. It is an invitation to grow up, to leave your knives at the door, to come not as a conqueror or a fearful scout, but as a neighbor bringing a dish to share. The humans were not the monsters in the dark. They were the caretakers of a quiet corner of the galaxy, waiting patiently for everyone else to be ready to whisper. And now, the first whisper had been exchanged. The conversation, at long last, could truly begin. The days after the humans left passed slowly on the eclipse of reason. The station felt like a held breath finally released, but the air was different. The Threxian patient, who they now knew as a dissident named KRTH, slowly healed. Dr. Tae Hyan and the human Dr. Yoon-ji had stayed in contact. They shared data on the bioquantum surgery. It was not giving away secrets. Tae Hyan explained to Jay with excitement. It was like sharing a new language for talking to cells. A language of gentle persuasion, not command. The report Jay sent to the High Council was long and detailed. He expected questions, maybe disbelief. The reply, when it came, was simple. Hold position. Await envoy. The envoy arrived a week later. It was not a politician, but a scientist. Her name was Scholar Nari, a graceful being from a species that valued deep thought. She had 2 large, dark eyes that missed nothing, and long, delicate fingers that danced over data slates. She went straight to the medical bay to see KRTH. Then she spent hours with Tae Hyan and Min Soo, reviewing every sensor log from the moment the pod appeared to the moment the human ship vanished. Finally, she asked to speak with Jay and Micha in the observation deck. She stood by the window, looking out at the gray void marked on their charts as human space. Commander Kim, she began, her voice soft, your actions have caused a crisis of understanding. Not a political crisis, a philosophical one. The High Council is not angry. They are confused. That makes 2 of us, Jay admitted. Scholar Nari turned. We believed humanity possessed a terrible weapon, a shield that burned anyone who touched it. We were wrong. Captain Lee explained it as a filter, a law of nature they simply enforce. My analysis suggests he was telling the truth, but it raises a profound question. She gestured to the stars. If their space is a filter that removes hostility, then what does that say about us? About why we never approached? Cha frowned. What do you mean? For 3 cycles, we saw their border as a threat, a warning. Keep out or be destroyed. But what if the message was always an invitation? Enter in peace. Our fear, our assumption of violence, stopped us from hearing it. We never tried to enter in peace. We only sent probes, then warships after the Threxian incident. We assumed the quiet was menace. What if it was just quiet? The idea settled in the room. Jay thought of the human media packets, the nature documentaries, the historical dramas, the baking shows. They were not codes or weapons. They were just things they liked, pieces of a normal, peaceful life. They had been sending letters about their home, and the galaxy had been reading them as declarations of war. It changes everything, Scholar Nari said. But it also changes nothing. The rule must stand. No species enters human space. She saw their looks and clarified. Because the price of entry is a state of mind we must choose for ourselves, not a permission they grant. We must, as a species, be ready to approach without a single weapon, without a single hidden thought of conquest. That is harder than it sounds. It requires a trust we do not yet have. Later, Jay found Micha in the small garden module, tending to the air plants. Do you think we could? He asked. Go there in peace? Not as observers, but as guests? Micha clipped a dead leaf. I think, she said slowly, we already did. Our shuttle was armed. We were afraid. But our intention, at its core, was to save a life. The human filter did not stop us. It did not switch off our shuttle. It only stopped the Threxians who came with pure hate. She looked at him. Our fear was not enough to trigger it. Our compassion was stronger. That evening, a personal communication arrived for Jay. It was from Captain Lee Ji-hoon. It was not an official channel. It was a simple, text-based message. Commander Kim, I hope this finds you well. Our patrols have noted the Threxian dissident movement is growing. The quiet idea is spreading. It seems saving one life did more than we hoped. Sometimes a single voice, singing a different song, is all a chorus needs to remember it can harmonize. Thank you for lending your station as a stage for that solo. If you ever wish to send a cultural packet of your own, the Soul Gate is always open for two-way traffic. We would be interested in your nature documentaries. Best, Lee.J showed it to Misha. A two-way street, he said. He's saying we can talk back, Misha whispered. Not just receive their broadcasts. We can send our own. It was a small thing, but it felt huge. For 3 cycles, contact had been a dripping tap from their side to the galaxy. Now, a human was suggesting they could turn the handle the other way. Scholar Nari, when shown the message, was thoughtful. A cultural exchange. Not through official channels. A personal one. Commander to captain. It is a test. Not of our technology, but of our character. What will we send? Will we send propaganda? Military histories? Or will we send art, music, stories of our own home? The question hung in the air. Jay knew the High Council would debate it for months. But Lee's message was not to the Council. It was to him. He made a decision. With Mai Sha and Min Su's help, he put together a data packet. He did not ask permission. He included things from the eclipse's own logs. Not the exciting parts. The boring ones. A time-lapse of a nebula as seen from their window. A recording of the soft, chiming music Min Su composed in his off hours. A recipe from the station's cook for a popular noodle dish. And a simple message, text only, from Jay to Lee. Captain Lee, thank you for your assistance. Enclosed are some pieces of our normal. We, too, enjoy the quiet. Jay Kim. He sent it through the Soul Gate relay. It felt like dropping a note into a vast, dark ocean. He had no idea if Lee would ever really see it. Weeks turned into a month. Life on the eclipse returned to its routines, but the silence from human space no longer felt ominous. It felt patient. Then, a reply came. Again, personal. Text-only. Commander Kim. The nebula is beautiful. The music is peaceful. We tried the noodles. Adding a little extra spice is recommended. Attached is a viewing file. A place we find quiet. Bestly, the attachment was not a documentary. It was a single, unedited video from a planetary surface. It showed a wide, flat plain of red grass under a purple sky. 2 small, furry animals with 6 legs were playfully chasing each other around a rock. The wind rustled the grass. There was no narration, no explanation. Just several minutes of another world's quiet afternoon. J played it on the observation deck screen. The crew gathered, watching in silence. There was no great message. No hidden meaning. It was just a piece of a home, shared. As the video ended, Misha spoke into the quiet room. They're not monsters. They're just people with a very good fence. Jay looked at the gray space on the map, now glowing with the memory of red grass and a purple sky. The rule still stood. No species entered human space, but now they finally comprehended why. It was not a prison. It was a porch light left on. A light that only looked scary if you were approaching with bad intentions. If you came with an open hand, it just showed you the way to the door. The filter worked. And for the first time, Jay felt not fear of what was on the other side, but a humble, hesitant curiosity. They had seen the power that enforced the border. Now, they had seen a quiet afternoon from the world behind it. The first was impressive. The second, in its own simple way, was far more profound. Jay Kim felt the room tilt, but nothing had moved. The hum of the station was the same. The stars outside the viewport were the same. Yet everything was different. The human captain, Lee Ji-hoon, sat calmly, having just explained that the most powerful weapon in known space was not a weapon at all, but a request for good manners. You shared this theory, Jay repeated slowly. With the Threxians? With the dissidents? Kang Soo-min, the human officer, nodded. With any who could hear. Their hive-mind communication is very good at some things, but it is bad at keeping secrets from itself. The idea of individual selfhood, once proposed correctly, is sticky. It spreads, like a quiet hum under their loud song. And the pod? Micha asked. It was a test? It was an escape, Lee said. The dissidents, the ones who heard the quiet hum, tried to help that one break free. They performed the surgery. But they were discovered. They could not hide it. So the hive commanders tried to destroy the evidence. They threw the pod into what they thought was a destructive singularity. But the space-time fault there is complex. It pushed the pod out near our border. We found it. We saw the surgery was a success, but the patient was dying. So we moved it to the nearest place with a medical bay or station. You used us, Min-soo said, his young voice sharp with accusation. Lee looked at him, and his gaze was not angry, but understanding. We presented a dying being with a chance for aid. You chose to give it. That is not us using you. That is you being who you are. The Threxian commanders who chased it here, they are the ones trying to use you as an excuse, as a target. Dr. Tae Hyen and the human doctor, Kang Yoon-ji, entered the room. Tae Hyen's face was alive with a kind of scientific joy Jay had never seen on him before. The surgical work? It is incredible, he said, forgetting protocol. It is not just cutting. It is a full biological rewrite at a quantum cellular level. They did not remove the assimilation nodes. They persuaded them to become something else. Neutral tissue. It is medicine that works by convincing the body to change its mind. Dr. Yoon-ji smiled. It is a gentle process, but a slow one. The patient is stable. Its mind is its own. It is confused and afraid, but it is no longer part of the chorus. It is a single voice. Just then, the station's comm system pinged. It was a priority channel from the Galactic Consensus High Council. Jay looked at Lee, who gave a small nod to proceed. The face of Elder Nara, a being of soft light and gentle voice, appeared on the screen. She looked troubled. Commander Kim, we have detected the Threxian fleet powering down at your location and a human vessel present. Our long-range sensors also show a significant distortion in the quantum field in your sector. Please explain. Jay took a breath. He told the story. The pod, the rescue, the Threxian threat, the human arrival. He stuck to facts. When he finished, Elder Nara was silent for a long time. Captain Lee, she said finally, your actions prevented violence. We thank you. But this theory you describe, it is a fundamental technology. A power that makes your border not a line on a map, but a law of nature. It is not a technology of control, Elder, Lee said, leaning slightly towards the screen. It is a principle of coexistence. A very simple one. Imposed will is unstable. Your own scientists have brushed against the edges of this idea in your consciousness studies. We simply took the next step. And what stops you? Elder Nara asked, her light flickering, from using this principle to impose your will, to suggest that our free will is an unstable state. It was the question in Jay's mind, the fear that had kept the galaxy away from human space for 3 cycles. Li Ji-hoon's expression became very serious, very plain. Because it would not work. Explain. Kang Soo-min answered. The principle is based on empathy, on the recognition of other consciousnesses as equally real and valid. To try to force that recognition on someone is a contradiction. It would be like trying to use a magnet that only works on non-metal. The tool itself would not function. Our border protocols only work against systems technological or biological that are already built on the idea of imposition. Against a free mind, or a technology built by free minds agreeing, it does nothing. It is a shield that only stops bullets. It does not stop hands shaking in peace. Elder Nara considered this. So your space is not a fortress. It is a filter. A very good way to say it, Lee agreed, smiling again. It filters out hostility. What comes in peace enters in peace. A soft alert sounded on Lee's wrist. He looked at it. Ah, the Threxian ships are beginning to reboot, as predicted. They will be confused, and their systems will be fine. But they will remember that their weapons failed. They will remember the quiet. He stood up. Elder, Commander, with your permission, we should return to our ship. We have been away from our patrol route long enough. Jay stood as well. You're leaving? Just like that? The excitement is over, Lee said. Your patient is safe. The bullies are going home with a story to tell. Our job here is done. He looked at Jay, then at Micha, Min-soo, Tae-hyen. You broke a rule today to save a life. Do not regret that. It is the best reason to ever break a rule. As the humans walked back to their airlock, Jay followed. He had to ask. Captain Lee, the first brush, your research vessel. Did you know what would happen to the Threxian mines? Lee paused at the hatch. He looked back, and for a moment, his calm face showed something else, a deep, old sadness. No, he said softly. We did not. We thought we were proposing a small idea, a tweak. We did not understand how loud their silence was. We hurt them. It was an accident, a terrible one. That is why the border rule exists. Not to protect us from you, but to protect everyone from accidents that happen when very different ways of being meet without a translator. He stepped into the airlock. Goodbye, Commander Kim. Your station is named well. Seek reason. It is usually quieter and more powerful than fear. The hatch sealed. Through the viewport, Jay watched the sleek human ship, the Steadfast, detach and drift away. It grew no engines of fire. It simply began to move, then blurred, and was gone. On the main screen, the 3 Threxian cruisers flickered with light again. They turned slowly, not towards the station, but away. They formed up, and without a word, jumped into warp space, retreating. The quiet returned to the eclipse of reason. But it was a different quiet now. Before, it had been the quiet of a locked door, of something hidden and feared. Now, Jay understood. It was the quiet of the human's empty field. The quiet after the shouting stops. It was the quiet of a space where weapons were just dead weight, and ideas were the only things that mattered. Micha came to stand beside him. A filter, she said, echoing Elder Nara's word. Jay nodded, looking at the stars where human space lay, dark and peaceful. They weren't keeping us out, he said, the full understanding settling into place. They were waiting for us to be ready to come in. And to do that, we had to stop shouting first. The numbers on the screen blinked down. 2, 1. Jay's hand was frozen over the comm panel. What could he say? The Threxian commander's voice had been final. There would be no negotiation. The shuttle's sensors showed the forward ports on the lead hive cruiser pulsing with a sickly light as they prepared to fire. The eclipse of reason, their home, was a fragile jewel behind the wall of enemy ships. Its weak shields would not hold dot then. A new signal cut in. It was clean and clear, overriding the Threxian channel. A man's face appeared on the main screen. He had dark hair, cropped short, and wore a plain black uniform with no rank pins they could recognize. He looked calm, maybe a little tired, like someone interrupted during a quiet task. A small tag on his uniform read, Lee Ji-hoon. Threxian vessels, this is Captain Lee of the Terran border ship Steadfast. You are aiming weapons at a consensus station in a neutral zone. Please stop. The voice was polite. It was not a shout, not a demand. It was a request. On the shuttle, Jay and Mi-Cha stared, shocked by the sudden, ordinary human face in the middle of their nightmare. The Threxian response was a furious click. Human, they broke your border law. They are contaminated by the thief. We will cleanse the area. Do not interfere. Captain Lee's head tilted slightly. The life pod? The one with the surgically altered Threxian inside? Yes, we found it drifting near a collapsed experimental warp lane. Nasty bit of space. It was a hazard to navigation. We moved it to the nearest safe point for recovery, which was near the eclipse. A simple safety measure. Jay listened, his mind struggling to catch up. The humans had moved the pod. They had put it there. It was not magic or a Threxian trick. It was a traffic decision. The being is a thief. The Threxian insisted, but the clicks sounded less sure now. It stole from the hive mind. It carries a sickness. Our scans show it stole nothing but its own biology back, Lee said, his tone still conversational. The surgical removal of forced assimilation nodes is not theft. It is medicine. You are not chasing a criminal. You are chasing a patient your own people tried to help. And now you are threatening neutral parties for offering aid. That is not acceptable behavior. The lead Threxian cruiser pulsed brighter. We will reclaim our property. Stand aside or be considered part of the contamination. Lee Ji-hoon sighed softly. He glanced away from the screen for a second, then looked back. I see. Well, we cannot allow you to fire in this area. It's against the rules. He turned. Ms. Kong, if you would. Standard border protocol. Let's keep things quiet. On the shuttle screen, the view split. Captain Lee remained on one side. The other side now showed a young woman with focused eyes at a simple console. Her hands moved over lighted panels. She did not press buttons. She made gentle, sweeping gestures. Nothing happened. No beam of light. No explosion. Then the lead Threxian cruiser's weapon ports went dark. The pulsing red glow vanished. A second later, every single light on its massive rock-like hull winked out. The other two cruisers followed, one after the other, like candles being snuffed. The ships did not drift. They simply stopped, completely dark and dead against the stars. No energy readings. No life signs. Nothing. Your systems will restart in approximately 6 hours, Captain Lee said, as if giving someone the time. You will find yourselves back in Threxian space, outside the agreed buffer zone. Please use the time to consider your actions. Eclipse of reason. Please accept our apologies for the trouble. We will come alongside to assist with your guest and your station. Please do not be alarmed. The transmission ended. The screen returned to a view of space. The three monstrous warships were now just silent, dark shapes. Jay realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out in a rush. Mi-Cha was gripping the edge of her console, her knuckles white. What did they do? They turned them off, Jay said, the words sounding impossible. A new, softer come request chimed. It was from the Eclipse. Min Su's voice was shaky with relief and confusion. Commander, the Threxian ships. They are completely inert. And a human vessel, the TBS Steadfast, has just appeared on our long-range sensors. It is approaching. They are asking for docking permission. Granted, Jay said, his voice rough. And prepare a full diplomatic welcome. We are on our way back. The return trip to the Eclipse was silent. The strange Threxian patient in its medical pod was the only sound, a soft hum from the stasis field. Jay's mind raced. The humans had not fired a shot. They had not destroyed anything. They had just stopped it. The most feared warships of the Threxian swarm were now like rocks floating in a stream. Harmless docking back in the Eclipse felt like returning to a different place. The fear was gone, replaced by a buzzing, anxious energy. The human ship was already there, connected to the main airlock. It was smaller than he expected, sleek and smooth. With no visible weapons, Dache and Mi-Cha hurried to the main reception corridor. Dr. Tae-Hyen was already there. His usual cool professional manner cracked open by sheer curiosity. The airlock door opened. Captain Lee Ji-hoon stepped through first. He was not tall, and he moved with an easy grace. Behind him came a few of his crew. A woman with sharp eyes, who must have been Kang Soo-min, the one who had made the gestures. Another woman with a medical insignia, Dr. Kang Yoon-ji. A few others whose roles were not clear. Commander Kim, Lee said, giving a small, respectful nod. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. Sometimes the Threxians need a moment to cool off. You? Disabled 3 Hive cruisers, Jay said. Unable to start with anything else. Temporarily, Lee corrected, as if that was the important part. Their technology is very loud. We just suggested they be quiet for a while. He looked past Jay to Dr. Tae-Hyen. You have the patient? Dr. Yoon-ji is excellent with complex xenobiology. She would like to assist, if you allow it. Tae-Hyen, who was proud of his skills, just nodded quickly. Yes, please. The surgical work is... I have never seen anything like it. As the doctors moved away, talking in low, fast technical terms, Captain Lee turned back to Jay. Perhaps we could talk in your briefing room? There are things you should know, now that you've stepped into the neighborhood. In the briefing room, Lee and his officer Kang Soo-min sat on one side. Jay, Mi-Cha, and Min Su sat on the other. Lee placed a small, clear data crystal on the table. The first brush, Lee began. That's what you call it, right? When a Threxian swarm tried to enter our space to assimilate technological distinctiveness? Jay nodded. The reports said a single human ship repelled them with an unknown weapon. The survivors spoke of mental trauma, a silent scream in their minds. It wasn't a weapon, Kang Soo-min said. Her voice was clear and direct. Not like you think of one. Their hive mind is a powerful thing. It forces a single consciousness onto many bodies. It is a bully. Our ship, the one you called a cruiser, was a research vessel. It was testing a new theory about consciousness and quantum fields. Lee took over. Think of reality as a conversation. Everyone adds their voice. Most species, like yours, listen and talk within the agreed rules physics. The Threxian hive mind shouts. It tries to drown out all other voices and make everyone repeat its words. He tapped the data crystal. It lit up, showing complex webs of light. We simply found a way to politely ask the shouting voice to use its inside voice, to remember that other voices have a right to exist. To the hive mind, that request felt like a scream. To us, it was turning down a volume knob that was hurting our ears. Jay tried to understand. So your technology, it attacks ideas, not metal? It doesn't attack, Sumin stressed. It proposes a more stable, more polite alternative. The Threxian weapon systems are based on imposed consensus. You will be us. Our border protocols suggest that it is an unstable state. The systems, which are linked to that unstable idea, find they cannot function. They shut down. The pod was different. The work on that Threxian is the same principle, but used for healing. Someone is proposing biologically that you can be you. We didn't do that surgery, but we shared the theory of it with those inside the Threxian who wanted to listen. Mi-Cha leaned forward. So the border, it's not a wall. It's a set of rules for the conversation, Lee finished. No shouting, no forcing. Come in peace, and you will find only peace. Come in war, and your war will simply stop working. You will be left with a ship and your thoughts, and a lot of quiet time to think about why you came. He smiled then, a small, quiet thing. No species enters human space, because to do so with bad intentions is to be a man shouting alone in an empty field. It is pointless. And now, unfortunately, you have all been forced to hear the shout. We are sorry for that. But now, you finally begin to see why the rule exists. The quiet on the station was a physical thing. It was the hum of the life support, the soft beep of a console, and the vast, empty silence from the other side of the viewport. For 3 long cycles, the Galactic Consensus Observation Post Eclipse of Reason had done exactly what its name suggested. Watched the forbidden border of human space and tried to understand the quiet. Commander J. Kim floated near the main window, a cup of cold tea forgotten in his hand. His face was calm, a mask he had perfected over years of service. Inside, a slow boredom had settled into his bones. The decree was absolute. No species enters human space. After the first brush, a brief and terrifying conflict no one liked to talk about, the rule was made. Humanity stayed in. Everyone else stayed out. Trade happened through drones. Talk happened over video. It was a peaceful, lonely, and deeply puzzling arrangement. His second, Mi-Cha, drifted over. She was quiet, her eyes sharp and missing little. She handed him a data slate. The latest exchange from the Soulgate drone, she said. More cultural packets. Jay took the slate, scrolling. What is it this time? Historical dramas, I think. Lots of people in old costumes arguing in rooms. And more documentaries. There is a 7-part series about the migration patterns of a bird called an Arctic tern. Jay allowed a small sigh to escape. And the analysts? Baffled, but busy. They've moved on from the competitive cooking shows to the home renovation videos. They believe it might be a subtle form of psychological conditioning about territorial improvement. Mi-Cha's lips twitched, the closest she ever came to a smile. Before Jay could answer, a sharp, clean sound cut the air. It was the tactical alarm, a sound they heard for drills, never for real. Young Min Su, who lived at the sensor station, twisted in his chair. His face, usually so eager, was pale. Commander, a spatial event. Inside the border. Jay pushed off the window, sailing to the command chair. Show me. A holographic map bloomed. The green arc of the consensus border was clear. Beyond it, the space belonging to humanity was marked by a simple, sober gray field. And there, a blinking red icon pulsed about 50 distance units inside that gray. It is a small craft, Minsu said, his voice tight. A life pod. Threxian energy signature. But it did not cross the border. Explain, Jay said, his eyes locked on the icon. There is no trajectory. No warp tunnel residue from our side. It just peered at those coordinates. As if it was dropped there. Minsu ran another scan. The pod is dead. All systems offline. But I am reading one life sign. It is very weak. A heavy silence fell over the deck. Every person there knew the two rules. The prime directive. No entry into human space. It was the first thing taught, the core law of their post. The secondary directive. Preserve. Sentient life. It was the moral heart of the consensus. They were now in direct conflict. Micha was at Jay's shoulder. A Threxian life pod. In human space. Appearing from nowhere. Her voice was low. It is a trap. Or a trick. It must be. Jay watched the blinking red light. A life was fading in the silent dark of the one place they were forbidden to go. Could it be a Threxian probe? A test of the border? Minsu shook his head. Its signature is wrong for a military probe. Too simple. It is a standard survival pod. And the life sign is erratic, failing. If they did nothing, a being would die, and they would never know why. If they acted, they would break the most important law in the galaxy. They would give the Threxians, who are always looking for an advantage, a reason to call the consensus lawbreakers. They might even give humanity a reason to look their way, and no one wanted that. Jay made his decision. It felt less like a choice, and more like a trap closing. Ready the shuttle wayfinder. Minimal crew. You and me, Misha. He turned to Minsu. Open a channel to Dr. Taehyun. Tell him to prepare a medical bay for a Threxian patient. Full biological isolation protocols. Mi-Cha's eyes widened, but she nodded. She was loyal, and she trusted him. Aye, Commander. The journey to the shuttle bay was tense. The crew they passed said nothing, but their eyes were wide. They all knew. Jay and Mi-Cha climbed into the small, sleek craft. The hatch sealed with a sound that felt very final. The launch was smooth. The wayfinder slipped out of the eclipse's bay and turned towards the great window of stars. On the navigation screen, a bright line marked their path. It ended at the green arc of the border. As they approached, Jay expected something, a hum, a ripple, a warning. There was nothing. One moment, the space on their screen was marked as neutral. The next, it was labeled in simple, plain text. Human space. They had broken the law. Inside, it looked no different. Stars still shone. Nebulae still glowed. But the weight on Jay's shoulders doubled. He felt like an intruder in a silent, dark house. 30 units to target, Nyasha said, her voice flat from concentration. The pod came into visual range. It was a nasty, organic-looking thing, like a piece of insect shell. It was dark, tumbling slowly. A long scar of melted metal marked its side. Jay guided the shuttle close, extending the docking tube. The connection clamped on with a thud. They put on full environment suits. The air inside the pod could be toxic. The hatch opened with a puff of frozen air. The interior was a wreck. Wires hung like vines. There was a single pod, a cocoon of translucent material. Inside, a Threxian lay still. It was taller than a human, its body a series of hard, chitinous plates. One of its 4 arms was missing. Its face, a collection of dark, complex eyes and sharp mouthparts, was still. A green fluid that was probably blood was frozen on its chest plate. Life sign is still there, Mia said, checking her wrist scanner. Barely. They worked quickly, detaching the pod from its wrecked cradle. It was heavy, but they got it into the shuttle's small cargo area and secured it. As Mei-cha turned to go back for a final check, her boot caught on a broken panel. She looked down. Jay. Her voice was strange. Look, he floated over. Among the wreckage was a cluster of organic-looking tubes and nodes, severed and clean. They were not broken by the crash. The cuts were precise, surgical. Jay knew Threxian biology well enough from his briefings. These were assimilation nodes, the parts that let a Threxian warrior inject its biocode into other beings, absorbing them into the hive mind. They had been removed. This is not a warrior, Mei-cha whispered. No, Jay agreed, a cold feeling spreading in his gut. It is something else. Let's go. Now. They returned to the cockpit, sealed the inner hatch, and detached from the life pod. Jay pushed the engines, wanting to put the gray space behind them. As they turned back towards the green border line and the distant shape of the eclipse, a new alarm chimed. Energy spike. Mei-cha called out. Massive. Right at the border. On the screen, space itself seemed to tear. A great, jagged shape of living rock and metal pushed its way into reality. Then another. And another. 3 Threxian hive cruisers. Their weapon ports glowing a dull, angry red, materialized directly between the Wayfinder and home. A harsh, clicking transmission filled their small cabin, translated by the computer into cold, flat words. Consensus vessel. You have violated the sacred border. You have taken a hive thief. Your contamination is absolute. Surrender the asset and yourselves for assimilation. This is your only warning. You have 10 seconds to comply. Jay stared at the monstrous ships. The eclipse was sending frantic hails. The shuttle's tiny weapons were useless. They were trapped in the one place they should not be, with a patient that was clearly more important than he had imagined. And now 3 warships were pointing guns at their home. He had tried to save a life. He had broken the law to do it. And now, it seemed, he had doomed them all. The countdown on the com screen ticked down. 5, 4, 3,